Yes,
Am I
you are.
audible?
Yes, you are.
Very much, sir. You are. Very much.
Okay. How do I make this bigger? I would like to know.
From our side, we will make it speakers mode. I think we can do it from our side, no? Speakers mode.
Can you make it larger? Because I've got my lecture on the computer.
Okay, sir.
It's okay. I think I'll manage.
I think, sir, it's. I hope actually it's quite visible to everyone, and it's okay. I think, sir.
Okay, we can start.
Okay. So, Dr. Moulang, should we start then? Hello, Dr. Moulang. Ma'am, please unmute yourself.
Yes.
ma'am.
Yeah.
So should we start then?
Yes, please. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So a very good morning to each one of you present here itself on this platform. On behalf of ICSSR NERC Shillong and the Department of History, Northeastern Hill University Shillong, I welcome each one of you present on this online platform to eagerly, I think, waiting and to hear Professor David Simlet, our eminent speaker today. Sir, on behalf of ICSSR and the Department of History, I welcome you to this eminent lecture series, and we are starting with you, I think, on 2nd July 2021. I also welcome Professor C.C. Moulang, the head of the Department of History, NEHU, the faculty members of the Department of History, faculty members from different disciplines of social science, NEHU, and also from different universities of Northeast who are joining here live, the research class of the Department of History and other branches of social science, guests, scholars, research class, ladies and gentlemen present here itself. It's very heartening that today Professor David Simlet, I think he is going to deliver the first online lecture of this session. And then as all of us understand, history speaks very poignantly and speaks very silently. And historical method speaks much more rationally and scientifically. That's why we have chosen a topic in the history and an eminent social scientist, Professor David Simlet, to start with our eminent lecture series. So with these words, I welcome each one of you. Now it is over to Professor Moulang to moderate the whole session. Ma'am, over to you.
Right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Panda. I too join Professor Panda to welcome all participants, and in particular, our guest speaker for today, Professor Simlet, who was, to many of us in the department, a teacher, a mentor, a well-wisher, and then finally a colleague. Thank you so much for agreeing to speak, sir. We're very, very happy. Without much ado, I think I will now request Professor Panda, Honorary Director, ICSSR NERC, who is also the person to initiate these lecture series by eminent social scientists, to kindly introduce our speaker for today.
Thank you, ma'am. I think Professor Simlet doesn't require any introduction. I think to all of us who are present here itself. Still, to make things a little formal, I have to introduce him. Let me, I think, introduce him. Professor David Simlet studied in St. Edmund's College, Shillong, where he graduated with honors in history in 1974. He then pursued master's program in history at the Northeastern Hill University, 1974 to 76. He taught in St. Edmund's College from 1977 to 1979, and Nehu, 1979 to, he served Nehu, in fact, he taught and he served Nehu from 1979 to 2012, almost for 33 years, where he was the head of the Department of History, controller of examinations, officiated as registrar and pro-vice chancellor of the university, and so many other positions. Professor David Simle was appointed Vice Chancellor of Rajiv Gandhi University, Itanagar, Central University in Arunachal Pradesh in October 2011. Awarded an MPhil. He was awarded an MPhil in the year 1980 and a PhD in 1985. He has received a number of fellowships, including Senior Fulbright Fellowship for Research in United States of America, a Charles Wallace Grant for Research in UK, and an Indo-France Cultural Exchange Grant for Research in Paris. His more recent publications are on the Age of Empire, 4 British Plans for the Northeast India, published by Sage India 2014. Another one is Layers of History, Essays on the Khasi Jaintiyas, published by Regency in 2015. And one more, Faith and Hope, Christian Missions and Churches in Northeast India, published by Akanksha Publishing House 2020. Professor Simle has delivered lectures at various universities in the United States of America while on the Fulbright Fellowship. He has also delivered lectures at the Center for South Asian Studies, Cambridge University, Edinburgh University, Swansea University, Indira Gandhi National Center for Arts, New Delhi, Jawaharlal University, New Delhi, Osmania University, and at universities and colleges in Northeast India. Professor David Simle was president of the Northeast India History Association 2010 to 2011. He was also the former honorary director of ICSR NERC, the position now I am holding. He was council member for the 2 terms of the Indian Council of Historical Research, New Delhi. He was also the council member of the Indian Council of Social Science Research, ICSSR, New Delhi. Professor Simle was the president of the Modern India section, Indian History Congress, at its 73rd session held at Mumbai University in January 2013. He joined as member in the Public Service Commission on 25th June 2020. On 4th January 2017, he was appointed chairman of Union Public Service Commission, Delhi. In retirement since January 2018, he continues to be active in delivering lectures, mentoring scholars, and conducting research. And that's why I think he's there with us today. So with this very brief introduction, I think I once again welcome Dr. David Simle to enlighten our young and always ignited minds in this platform of online lecture series by eminent scholars. With these words, I think I request Dr. Moulang to take over the rest part of the session of online lecture series. Now it's over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Professor Panda. I think you were able to encapsulate the career of Professor Simle quite well in the short time that you had. Professor Simle, may I now request you to kindly deliver your lecture, and we will follow that with a discussion. We'll take some questions, comments, whatever. Professor Simle, please take it away.
Right.
So will you introduce the topic yourself?
Yes.
Maybe I should just mention perhaps that Professor Simle will be speaking on the theme, the plan that fell through, Crown Colony Protectorate for Northeast India, concept to collapse 1941 to 46. Right, sir.
Right. Thank you very much, Cecil. Are you hearing me okay?
Very well, sir. Very well.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. Yes.
Very
And is my image okay?
Yes. Yes. Perfect.
Perfectly okay. Perfectly
Fine.
okay. It comes very nice.
Fine. Thank you, Professor Panda, for the introduction, and my former colleague and dear student and friend, Cecil Maulong, for moderating today's discussion. My lecture today will be on the plan that fell through, Crown Colony Protectorate for the Hills of Northeast India, concept to collapse 1941 to 1946. My introduction. In 2014, Sage India published On the Edge of Empire, 4 British plans for Northeast India. The confidential notes of 2 Assam governors, Sir Robert Reed and Sir Andrew Clow, and 2 ICS officers of the Assam administration, James P. Mill and Philip F. Adams, on their proposals for administering the hill areas of the region before independence and after, with an introduction by me. All this formed the text of the book. Reviews were both appreciative and critical. I am encouraged by the reviews to make a fuller presentation on this little-known theme. The purpose of making this shorter presentation on the subject is to situate the hill areas of Northeast India shortly before the transfer of power in 1947 and prior to the process of integrating the hill region into the Indian Union. In doing so, it will partly answer why the integration of some of the hill districts into Assam and India was not as smooth as might have been wished. Further, it suggests that the neglect to consider several British opinions on the future and demarcation of the hill areas in an independent India was in part the Assam problem in its relations with the hill people. This presentation makes no attempt to support or advocate the Crown Colony or Protectorate agency, only that it had in it a feeble and ill-timed bid to do something for the political future of the hill people. Now I will discuss the Reed Plan. Speaking at the annual prize distribution of the Welsh Mission Girls High School in Shillong on 13th November 1941, Reed told the audience of school children, their parents, teachers, and guests that India was on the threshold of great changes. And he told them, "Where do you come into this picture?" he asked. His audience, largely school children, surely did not know what to answer. He then went on to say, and I quote him, "It may be, it is no new thought, for it has been canvassed in the press often enough, that the destiny of these hills and other areas of Assam will follow another course than that of being linked with those of India proper. It may be otherwise, but sooner or later, the question is going to be canvassed, and the decision will depend in great measure on public support." Here, important is to understand that he's speaking, this is the first attempt of the governor to inform that he had just written a long 19-page note on the future of Northeast India and the hills, linking it with Burma. What motivated Sir Robert Reed, governor of Assam, to write the confidential, a note on the future of the present excluded, partially excluded, and tribal areas of Assam is uncertain. That he wrote it after traveling around the province of his charge, meeting deputations of tribal leaders, consulting the deputy commissioners and officials in the Assam administration, there is no doubt. A hint comes in the very first paragraph where he writes, "The identity of the countries with which they march and their importance from the point of view of strategy and international politics are factors which cannot be overlooked." Interestingly, a footnote to this opinion clarified that to his mind, and I quote him, "Problems arising out of the Sino-Japanese War and the World War of 1939 have underlined the importance of the Northeast frontier in its relations to Tibet, China, Burma, and Japan. So he puts Northeast India into a global context. As a build-up to this plan, Reed reviewed the pattern of administration of the excluded areas, the partially excluded areas, and the unadministered tracts between India and Burma before the Government of India Act 1935, before it came into operation. He drew much from the memoranda of N.E. Parry, who had earlier been Deputy Commissioner of the Garo Hills and later Superintendent of the Lushai Hills. And again, he used the memoranda of Sir John Hutton, for many years Deputy Commissioner of the Naga Hills, in their writing to the Indian Statutory Commission, 1930. Hutton's views were that the hill people were racially, historically, culturally, and linguistically different from the people of the plains of Assam, while their administration was wholly on different lines. Both he and Parry had suggested to the Commission the formation of a northeastern frontier province to comprise of as many of the backward tracts of Assam and Burma as would be conveniently included in it. Hutton subsequently elaborated his views in 1930 and 1935. Reed believed the boundary between India and Burma, which only in 1935 was separated from the Indian administration, was artificial as it was imperceptible. So Robert Reed revived Hutton's idea of a Northeast province or agency, embracing the entire fringe of hills from the Lushai Hills and the Lakher land in the south in a crescent shape to the hills of present Arunachal Pradesh. He advocated the inclusion in this administration of the Chittagong Hill tracts, the areas occupied by the Nagas and Chins of Burma and the Shan state. Also considered for inclusion were the 25 Khasi states and Manipur, and the unadministered territory. The unadministered territory was a territory lying between the present-day Naga Hills and Burma. He estimated that the population of the agency, excluding those areas of Burma, would be 2.5 million. The most significant departure Reed made over Hutton's plan was that while the latter proposed that the Northeast province or agency would be administered by India, Governor Reed marked that he would put this under a chief commissioner, and he in turn would, I imagine, have to be divorced, as is Burma, from the control of the Government of India and put under some appropriate department at Whitehall. So this is his plan, that the hill areas of Northeast India and Burma should come together into an agency under a chief commissioner and to be administered by Whitehall. He visualized that the form of polity would be on self-governing lines, in a way outlined in John Hutton's note of March 1928. And he says, institutions of this kind in the plains are as good as dead, but in the tribal areas, they are untouched and working. Elders or chiefs with their advisors settle the vast majority of disputes. Villages have their own funds, and village roads and bridges are kept by communal unpaid labor. Each village is a self-governing unit, but there are unmistakable signs of willingness to combine into larger units. The Lushai Hills have the nucleus for this. He admitted finance would be difficult, as these hills, except the Jayanti Hills, were deficit areas. Were the scheme to take effect, he continued, this agency would have to draw from finance from imperial sources, for which there were precedents in the history of crown colonies in Africa. The proposed province, Reed suggested, could be manned by an expanded Burma frontier service. The amount of control would undoubtedly have to be very considerable for a time, but it is essential that it should come from Whitehall and not from India, to which the hill tracts are entirely alien. Friends, you would note that I am using a number of quotations from Reed, and I will continue to give you quotations from Andrew Clow, James Mills, and others. Reed admitted that what he had drawn up was only a tentative proposal in broad outline, for which much detail had to be filled. But supposing, he said, it were decided, for whatever reason, that the scheme he had outlined were impracticable, he trusted that he had sufficiently explained that to place the hills under the control of an Assam ministry was impossible and unworkable. Copies of the confidential note soon reached the Viceroy, Lord Linlithgow, and L.S. Emery, the Secretary of State for India. The latter was so impressed with the plan that he gave a copy to Professor Reginald Coupland, who used it in his third and final volume on the constitutional problem in India, and is unmistakably credited with changing a private and confidential report into a scheme that took his name. Friends, you will find from historical records and history books that the plan is not called the Reed Plan, it is called Coupland Plan, after Reginald Coupland's publication in 1943, and I will go to my footnote and see, give you the date, yes, it's not coming. Anyway, am I still audible?
Yes, sir, very much.
Yes, yes.
Very good.
Very much. Very clear,
Thank
very
you.
clear.
And I'm continuing. When asked for their views, the opinion of the Burma administration, then housed in Shimla, following their evacuation from Burma, was divided. Soon after the Japanese took over Burma, the Burma administration shifted to India and were housed in Simla, in a hotel in Shimla. There, H.J. Mitchell, the chairman of the Commission on Scheduled Areas of Burma, was not in support of Reed's plan. His personal view influenced the Burma administration not to support the Crown Colony scheme and Burma's inclusion in it. The plan was discussed by L.S. Emery, the Secretary of State for India, and Lord Wavell shortly before the latter left England to take charge as Governor-General of India, and also with Reginald Dorman Smith, Governor of Burma, then also in London to discuss Burma's future. Wavell sometime later saw Dorman Smith in Shimla and discussed a number of points with him. The most important was the governor's idea that the tribal areas of Burma, Assam, and possibly Bengal should be formed into a separate unit and administered by the Governor-General or by the Governor of Burma. So once Dorman Smith gets into this idea, he not only puts the Burma situation, the Assam and the India situation, but also includes Bengal in this. So he's looking at a much broader area. Shortly thereafter, Wavell was credited with taking home in 1945 a plan for a province to be solely ruled by Britain. Meanwhile, discussions progressed through 1943-46 on the question of administrative amalgamation of the Burma-Assam frontier area. I've just put a short paragraph on the question of amalgamation and the border issue over here, and I hope to develop this into a full-fledged article in course of time. A matter of concerns was the readjustment of the frontier between Burma and India and the tribal areas, and the desirability of some system of coordination of administration. Representatives of the Burma administration viewed that distinct tribes should generally not be divided into two administrations, and the boundaries should be drawn so as to bring as far as possible the whole of a tribe under that government which already had included in its territory the majority of a tribe. Friends, we are living in the Northeast, and you can understand a situation, a very fluid situation, where after 1935, Burma has a separate administration and India remains under the Governor General. Now, between the boundaries of India and Burma is a watershed where tribes live on both sides, and these were taken up by not only Reed, by Clow and J.P. Mills. James P. Mill, ICS, conveyed the opinion of Reed's successor, Sir Andrew Clow, that he preferred to envisage a future in which the tribal areas and the excluded areas should be merged into the province of Assam rather than be cut off from it. Reed's belief that the plans he had revived would be canvassed was limited to discussions between the officials of the India Office, London, India, and Burma. Public support, which apparently was not sought, meant that the plan did not percolate to the people who would have been affected by the secret discussions. However, I've been able to find some response of tribal leaders. Some tribal political leaders did get wind of the plan. Reverend J.J.M. Nichols Roy, representing the Khasi Hills, submitted a memorandum to the British Cabinet mission in which he categorically stated that the Protectorate would not be viable. And he wrote, "When the whole of India will get independence, the hill people of Assam should get their own share of independence, and they should be connected with the province of Assam." Another clergyman and legislator, Reverend L. Gatpur, representing the Jayanti Hills, hoped his hills would come into the Protectorate. 3 Garos wrote the British parliamentary delegation in February 1946, saying that they had heard rumors that a plan was considering to exclude Garo Hills from Assam and India. They opposed the plan. Naga's meeting in Kohima in early 1945 asked to remain under the British Crown with their own legislative council. The Mizos of the Lushai Hills voiced their disapproval of the plan. They favored autonomous status for the Lushai Hills within the province of Assam. Now I move to Andrew Clow's position. And only a month ago, I was able to get a biography of Andrew Clow written by his grandnephew, and I'm using some portion of that. Governor Clow's position. While the tribal leaders in the hill areas were getting increasingly drawn into discussions of the future status of the hills, Reed's successor, Andrew Clow, the last British governor of Assam, published in 1945 a rather long tract or pamphlet, The Future Government of Assam Tribal People. Prepared between March and October 1945, the memorandum demolished Reed's proposal, first by suggesting alterations in hill area administration, and secondly, by giving his personal views on the matter. He has a large section in his tract on demolishing the Reed plan. He made it clear that the time was not opportune for such a proposal. And he wrote, "It seems most unlikely," he wrote, "that a British government which is prepared to set India and Burma on self-governing footing should now undertake the administrative and financial responsibility of a patchwork of sparsely populated hills lying where these hills do. Indian opinion would be equally strongly opposed to the constitution of a foreign territory with its natural boundaries. To ask an Indian government to contribute towards the maintenance of an amputated member would be regarded as adding insult to injury." Clow preferred a merger of the hills and plains of Assam in a manner which would conserve tribal rights and would recognize in a very effective manner the different needs and outlooks of these two areas. The last paragraph of Reed's memorandum sums up his thoughts on the matter. And again, I quote Andrew Clow. Assam is never likely to be as homogeneous as other provinces. The plains people are not so divided as those of the hills, but they are far from being a single people such as can be found in many equally large or larger areas of India. But this great collection of people in the hills and plains have been set in a particularly well-demarcated corner of the world, and their welfare will depend on their proving able to live together. Assam should look to her diversity and to her capacity for toleration, which is greater than that of other provinces, to provide her strength. Though Clow wrote a very, very long note, which I have explained in my On the Edge of Empire, I have made but a shorter version of it for today's lecture. And now I move to J.P. Mills. Interestingly, J.P. Mills, the advisor to the governor of Assam, to both Governors Reed and Clow, was also at work to settle the problem of hill area administration. He too published in 1945 a small but very concise tract, a note on the future of the hill tribes of Assam and the adjoining hills in a self-governing India. This is important. A note on the future of the hill tribes of Assam and the adjoining hills in a self-governing India. There is a perceptive change in the outlook of Mills from what Governor Reed was writing. After reviewing the indigenous tribal administrative system, the historical background, the racial and cultural setting, and other related matters, he put down his views on the possible alternative of the relationship between the hills and plains of Assam. He ruled out that it was in the best interest of the hill tribes to be included in Assam. An alternative appeared to him to be a choice between the two extremes of excluding only some of the tribal areas and to including only the partially excluded areas. Another alternative was to temporarily extend to the hills of Assam with special treatment designed on the lines of indirect rule, to draw these institutions which still survived and to fit the tribals for eventual union with the province of Assam. Now, Mills differs from Andrew Clow, and he says that the areas should not be joined up with Assam, and that the tribals should be fitted into an administration under indirect rule. If the hills were to be separated from the plains, Mills continued, the two alternatives were either to form a province composed of district, frontier tracts, agencies, and states, or to form a union of states from the outset. He strongly favored the second alternative. Giving an outline of the scheme, he suggested that homogeneous areas could be termed as states, such as, for instance, the Abor state, covering all the tribes included under the term, a Lushai state, a Naga state, a Khasi state, which very interestingly could include the Garos and the Jaintias. Now just see how interesting this view was, because today you have Arunachal, you have Nagaland, you have Mizoram, and you have Meghalaya. So J.P. Mills was thinking as early as 1945 that these people should be brought into a form of government where they would have the ability to govern themselves. Within this union of states would be substates, a term borrowed from the Burma context, where small or intermingled tribes had been combined into a single substate. Full use would be made of existing customs and institutions, such as the village councils, by keeping power in ordinary affairs as local as possible. With regard to staff, each state would require a political officer, with an additional political officer in larger states.
Professor Simle, something wrong.
I think Professor Simle's audio, there is some problem.
Yes.
Sir,
Yes.
sir, are you able to hear us, sir? Professor Simle? I think there may be a network problem.
I think so. Maybe we should just give him a call.
I think. To give a call or should I give a call to you?
I can give him a call.
Okay, just give a call to you. Yeah, I think he's back now.
Is it okay?
Yeah, now it's okay, sir. I think for half a minute actually, the audio was not coming.
Okay, I would go back.
Yeah. Sure, sir. No problem. It's okay now.
Right. Mills wanted the administrative staff to be as small as possible. In line with the principle of paternal administration, the aim, he believed, ought to be indirect rule rather than administration. So for several reasons, Mills ruled out Shillong as the possible capital of the Union of States, including the possibility of Shillong remaining the capital of the province of Assam and the difficulty of having an airstrip nearby. Imphal appeared to him to offer better advantages. From there, the states could be reached by air. Tripura and Sikkim, if included, could be reached with equal ease. The Naga state would be within close reach, and communication with Burma, with which relations were likely to become closer, would be easy. I now move to the 2 pages in my conclusion. Meanwhile, Reginald Dorman Smith, the governor of Burma, despite the advice of his officers, continued to be drawn to the plan and admitted our flirting with the Reed idea of a separate agency for the Burma-Assam frontier. A very interesting comment of our flirting with the Reed plan. However, with the return of British administration to Burma after the war in 1945, and the changed situation with discussions beginning for Burma's independence, he could see nothing but trouble ahead in Burma, if we attempt to pursue the separate agency scheme. And I would like this matter now to be considered closed. On 6th May 1946, Pethick Lawrence, the Secretary of State for India, recorded a minute. At the present stage of proceedings, agreement has been reached by the Secretary of State and the Viceroy of the impracticability of transferring responsibility for the backward tracts from the province to any outside authority, whether that should be a British High Commission or a United Nations mandate. 4 months later, a question was raised in the Legislative Assembly whether it was a fact that a proposal by the advisor to the governor of Assam for tribal areas was under consideration for forming a separate area to be named Northeast Frontier Area Agency and to be placed under the Crown and not to be included in the Constitution of India. Jawaharlal Nehru, member for External Affairs, replied that there was no such proposal before government. The Secretary of State for India and Burma, Pethick Lawrence's minute of 6 May 1946 sealed the fate of the Crown Colony for Northeast India and the hill areas of Burma, including the plans for other backward areas. With Prime Minister Clement Attlee's Labour government committed to India's freedom and an enclave of a Crown Colony for the hill areas was not possible, apart from it being ill-timed and conceived rather late to enable it to take shape. Moreover, the motives underlying it would have been grossly suspected by the new Indian leadership. The British plans for the hill areas were either shelved or ignored, if not set aside by the new Assamese leaders. Council had been carefully prepared by those who left and quickly ignored by those in authority after 1947. As for the hill people and leaders, their views mattered little in 1947-1950. Events after 1950 were to show just how understanding India's former administrators had been towards India's Northeast. And with that, I conclude my lecture. I have, at this stage, I may say that it's been a privilege to have made this first presentation under the series of the ICSSR. I trust that the series will continue in the days to come. And as much as others have seen this presentation today, I will be following other presentations in time. I'm open to any questions.
Thank you very much, Professor Semle. And I now, we will take a few questions. Comments, questions,
Yeah.
any?
You can take questions, you can take reflections, comments, anything.
Yes. So, yes, Binayak, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Of course, thank you so much, sir. It's such a privilege for your students to hear you again and again. But sir, I mean, your book and your presentation today have been both fascinating. They're just two small points that one, of course, I would humbly like to suggest that this is one text which is extremely relevant, not only in view of the 75 years of India's independence that we're going to celebrate, but more importantly, the fact that this is one book that actually addresses the question of partition and the hill areas of Northeast India. So therefore, in that sense, the question of indigenous communities, that there were leaders, there were people thinking about the indigenous communities and how their future would be shaped, is something that makes this text, this makes this book and the presentation very attractive. But having you did mention about, make a reference to some Garo leaders. Sir, what about the indigenous chiefs and their position vis-a-vis these plans? Because their lives would also be affected by the colonial plan that was coming in. This is something that I want to know, because one of the things that we see that happens with the Radcliffe Award, the partition award given by Sir Cyril Radcliffe, is that the Khasi and Jaintia territories are partitioned between India and East Pakistan. And, some part become part of, East Pakistan, and the others become part of composite Assam. So how does the indigenous chiefs respond to it? So can we know something about that? Is there any hint about how the common people, not just the English educated leaders, but the common people per se were responding to the plan? Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Vinayak, for your comments. From my study on this Crown Colony and the Protectorate plan, I find no response from the chiefs. The Khasi chiefs, Tripura and Manipur, though they were to be included in the Crown Colony plan if it were to take shape, the British did not seem to have considered their views. In fact, Reed had very categorically wanted these areas in, but he does not take them into any confidence. It is only the political leadership, and I've mentioned their designations, they seem to have had wind of the plan. So it did not percolate down to the common people. Though he had initially said that it would depend largely on public support, that public support did not come. Yes, the 4 plans which I've put into On the Edge of Empire is a fine attempt to enable as many scholars to read the plans, not in the original book, the original tracks, but in a combined attempt through On the Edge of Empire. Here, let me point out that there have been so many comments on the Crown Colony Plan by historians, political scientists, and others who have not actually read the plans, but made comments. And I'm happy that they now are able to read up the plans and to further develop their ideas, such as the reviews that came after the publication in 2014. Is that okay, Binayak?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Binayak.
Do you have any other comments, Binayak? If not,
No,
we'll
ma'am.
get Professor Thakur. I think Professor Thakur now has, he wants to ask something. Yes, please go ahead.
Professor Lamar is also raising his hand, and Professor Thakur. So, ma'am, it's up to you. So, ma'am, you are.
Professor Thakur, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Professor Thakur, you have to unmute yourself.
Yes.
Professor Thakur, you have to unmute.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Sir, I have a small information to seek. That, sir, what happened to these plants when nation became post-colonial or India became post-colonial? In the post-colonial India, what happened to those plants? How they were discarded or changed, or they were adopted? What kind of policy at that point of time they developed?
May I answer this?
And
before you move to the next one, may I answer this?
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
The plans were not considered because it was under suspicion by the Indian leadership.
Okay.
And the Assamese leaders did not want to have anything to do with them. And therefore, the plans were shelved. They were not taken up for consideration in any forum after 1947. No, they were not taken up in any forum. Even if the plans did not take shape, Reed, Clough, Mills, and even Adams in 1947 had made proposals for the administration of the hill tribes and a policy of administering them, which, if they were taken into consideration, might have brought about a better understanding between the hills and the plains. But this was not to be. And you will find a situation after 1950 of some trying cases emerging in the Naga Hills, in the Lushai Hills, and elsewhere.
Sir, this Dr. Bhariyar Elvin and Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, then Nehruvian and NEFA, some reflections of some kind of a special position is there. That's why I was asking you to know on this. And sir, is this plan talking about any parallel do we find in Africa and South Asia? Because British were ruling in Africa and South Asia. So do we have similar condition like Northeast India? Because the similar condition in Northwest India is slightly different than Northeast India. British plan here is different than Northwest India. So in Africa and South Asia, sir.
Yes. The South Asia dimension of any relationship is not mentioned. It is only the Shan state and the Burma tribal areas which were to be brought under this administration. But it did not go further into South Asia. The similarities was not compared there. But Reed does talk about crown colonies in Basutoland and Swaziland.
Okay, sir.
very briefly in his note.
Oh.
But I have been able to get a memoir of Sir Robert Reid of 1949. After he returned back to England, he wrote his memoir. And there he goes into some elaborate detail of a connection between Africa and Northeast India.
Oh,
I will be able to review this in a later publication.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. And sir, any movement, any opinion about immigrants like refugees from Bengal or Marwari settlers or Gorkhas in this plan? Do these plans talk about refugees or settlers?
No, there was nothing about the Marwaris, the Nepalese, and the refugees, other than talking about communities broadly, such as the Bengalis in Sylhet and elsewhere.
So no mention a special program or a special thing about their pains and sufferings.
It's exclusively on the hill areas and the plains people, the tribal people in the plains and the hill areas.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Before I go to Professor Lamare Chopin, Professor Emble, there's a question here from someone who says, is it true that Fizo had rejected the plan? But you mentioned that in 1945, the Nagas had accepted the plan. Which Naga group was this?
No, I did not say that the Nagas accepted the plan. The Nagas wanted to continue to remain under British administration, not the plan. I will go back to my note.
Is this Tejimala? Is this
yes,
Tejimala?
Yes, this question is from Professor Tejimala, it seems.
Right. Okay. Sir, you can go ahead if you want to clarify this.
No, here it is. Here's my point. Nagas meeting in Kohima in early 1945 asked to remain under the British Crown with their own legislative council. And I've just taken 1945. This issue continues into 1946 and into 1947, as Tejimala would be able to know. If this is Tejimala who's asking the question.
Yes, sir.
How are you, Tejimala?
Nice to see you, sir. I'm fine. Thank you. I don't know.
Good.
So are you satisfied with the answer or anything else, Tejimala? If not, we'll move on to Shoban first, and then we'll go back to Binayak. Professor Lamare?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah, please.
Hello,
go
sir.
ahead.
Hello, Shoban.
Yeah, nice to hear you, sir. Take us back to the classroom once again.
Yes.
You never, never really fail to impress us with the things that you have to say and your sources, which are always so strong. Yes, sir. Nice to see you also. With all this lockdown, we never really got a chance to meet. Once in a while we do talk, but then it's nicer to hear you taking us back to the classroom. Sir, I would like to draw your attention to something. This is more of a counterfactual question. And I would like to draw your attention to this because there are a lot of things which have been expressed post 1947, especially about the attitude of the people here in the hills, the kind of perceptions which they were having about this entire plan as to what the British they were having really for them. Well, sir, this is something which, we cannot really resist imagining the alternative scenario. It is in this context that I want to put this question as to what might have really happened. Today, maybe for a hardcore historian, this kind of a question doesn't really apply. But then we cannot really escape this. because considering the kind of problems which Northeast have gone through post 1947, the series of insurgency movements and the kind of claims and counterclaims that the people are so different from the rest. So based on that, sir, like I would like to draw your attention to this, like did this plan which you have just shared with us, did this plan really influence some of the groups, like who really wanted to break away from India? Or were there also other kind of mechanism in play, other kind of forces which were in play, which have projected this idea once again, be it in the case of the Khazis, be it in the case of the Garos, or the case of the Assamese group? Here I'm talking about the different insurgency group here in the Northeast. In what way did these ideas, help them to project their ideas of, of separate identity, and so much so that, like, we do hear, I for one, I did hear about this, that, like the different tribes would have been much better under the British crown, rather than be with the mainland India. I mean, like, we do hear all these kind of things. What is your take, sir? How would you react to this?
I'm a hardcore historian, as you say, a hardcore historian using the sources, and I speak largely on the sources that I have with me and put them together into a context such as I have done today. I found over here that there was no encouragement of the British proposals, particularly Reed's proposal, for any breakaway. Neither was he encouraging any forces which would later take advantage of the situation. If there was any consideration of the plans, this and the possibility of the plans taking shape, it comes much after 1946, 1947. By 1946, this is closed. It is closed in the British records. Public opinion turned their attention to the whole issue of integration with India and the merger with India. So attention was drawn away. And once the integration process is almost complete by 1947, 1948, then the issues raised in the Naga Hills emerge, raised in the Lushai Hills emerge, but these come only in the 1950s. I see no immediate influence of these plans, and particularly Reed's plan, to the emergence of any insurgency or unrest in Northeast India. Though, however, very, very much later, there is some indication of thought on this process, because there was a discussion somewhere, and I got from Shillong Times an article called, referring to the Brachin state, the Brachin, Brahmaputra Chindwin. So, political scientists and observers of this study between 1947, 48 into Southeast Asia would be able to go into, look up what was this Brachin state proposal. This comes much later.
Okay, sir. Right.
Vinayak,
Thank
can you go ahead? Vinayak?
Sir, if one were to actually go back to your book, and you're talking about Reed's plan, I would draw your attention to Clough's plan as well. Again, from your book. Sir, don't you think that all these plans had an indirect impact on the way the sixth schedule was actually getting formulated once the constitution was coming into force?
I see no reference in the any material relating to the formation of the sixth schedule, whether it was the Rao Committee or the Constituent Assembly. They make no reference. It was under so much of suspicion and concern. These plans were actually shelved, and there was no reference to it. My only concern here was that there's a wealth of information over here of how the tribal community should be governed under indirect administration. And if the plans, other than the creation of a separate colony, were considered, the Indian administration perhaps would have been a little more careful in the administering of the hill areas of Northeast India. But I see no reference in the formation of the 6th schedule discussions to the Crown Colony Plan.
Professor Seemley, I think I'll ask you a question myself.
Yes, okay.
As well.
Yes, sir.
You know, I just wanted to ask you, how far do you think this policy of exclusion and segregation of the hill tribes from the plains people, how far do you think, if at all, did it contribute to the sense of alienation that that you have between the people of the region, the hill people of the region, and those of the plains? Because the justification for these plans was, you know, to create this crown colony, because apparently the government of India, independent India, would not be able to administer the hill people the way they should be, in terms of protecting their culture and tradition and so on and so forth, because they are so radically different race and culture, tradition from the plains people. So don't you think that this sense of alienation, you know, has been contributed to a great measure because of these plans?
Professor Maulong, one must remember that in the past too, there was an alienation. And it was not very welcome for the hill people to be brought under an Assam administration. Assam did bring about a form of administration right from the 1860s and into the years before independence, and even thereafter. But it was not a very friendly relationship between the hill people and the plains people. And therefore, you do find in the 1950s, the 60s, and even into the 70s, attempts by the hill people to administer themselves. And therefore, eventually you get the formation of Nagaland, Mizoram, Arunachal, Meghalaya, and so on. So I think it was correct and right that the hill people should administer themselves in whatever form they would want that administration to be. But that even today we understand that the Assam connection is extremely important. The geographical connection of the hill people with Assam is a connection which will be for all time.
Professor Seemley, I mean, I agree that they're very different. The question is that some of the groups, at least for example, the Khasi Jaintias, had already had very long-term relations with the people across the border, with the plains people. So,
yes, they had a long relationship, but not one of being administered by Assam.
Right. No, no. What I'm saying is this sense of alienation that apparently was there, so much that they could.
I've not developed this idea in this. You will find it on the Edge of Empire. There were some legislators in the Constituent Assembly who wanted to assimilate the hill people. Now, they were as blatant as that, saying that they were not given an opportunity earlier to assimilate the hill people, and they wanted that to be done post-independence. Now, these are the questions that have to be raised by others. I may not be able to study it. Let somebody else, a young scholar, take it up. For instance, the 1960 language bill, which eventually brought the unrest in the hills of Northeast India and saw the emergence of Meghalaya, because Assam wanted to impose the Assamese as a language, as an official language. So these are indications of a very, very strained relationship between the hill people and the people of the plains.
Professor Seemley, I totally agree, because you have brought it out, and I have read your introduction actually on the Edge of Empire, where you have indicated about how the Mizos, the Lushais, felt about the possibility of being swarmed by people of the plains. And elsewhere also you have brought out some of the statements made by Chaliha, for
Yes.
example. You talked about that assimilation. So I get that, sir. But my point really being, do we know much about how the people actually felt? I mean, do these plans or their reports anywhere reflect the actual feelings and perspectives of the general people, aside from the small group of elite members?
No, it did not percolate down to the ordinary person. And it was not discussed sufficiently in the press, though Reid talks about the coverage in the press. It did not go down. It was a policy which was at a very high level of consideration. And it did not consider at all the opinion of the local people.
Further, Professor Imle, if we are talking about this creation of a crown colony, how feasible was it to be administered from Whitehall rather than Delhi? I mean, has there been success in the context of Africa, for example? Do we have any other?
Leave aside Africa, Swaziland and Lesotho land. It's a very different situation there. But geographically, this would have been an impossibility. It would have been an impossibility, a very difficult place to administer. Finance would have been a problem. The staff to administer it under continued British rule would have been suspect by the Indian administration. And so it was not timed well. And even if it was timed okay in 1935, if it would have emerged in 1935, in the Government of India Act 1935, Indian nationalism had advanced sufficiently not to have allowed the plan to take shape.
One last question from my side, Professor Imle, is if this plan for the creation of a crown colony was justified with the objective of providing, the right kind of administration for the hill people. I mean, they were considering them, to protect their culture, tradition, so on and so forth. Why was it then when they drew the Radcliffe line, or for that matter, the Maxwell-Johnston line? Why were the perspectives, the feelings, the ideas of the people who would be affected not taken into consideration? If they were so concerned about the well-being of these people, why were these lines drawn very arbitrarily,
Well, yes, as you said, very arbitrarily they were done. And this line was drawn before 1947. For instance, the partition of Burma and India in 1935 drew a line. And there is a very interesting book by a French scholar who has studied the Patkai Hills. My footnote in one of my references, I have referred to a very recent publication of a French scholar who has studied the issue of demarcating the boundary between India and Burma along the Patkai Hills. The Patkai Hills is a stretch of, is a small strip of territory between north of the Chin Hills, but more towards the Naga Hills, and on both sides of which Nagas are in India and Nagas are in Burma. Now, this was in 1935, and no issues were brought up in 1947 because it did not come under the Radcliffe. Am I right, Binayak? It did not come under the Radcliffe Award.
Yes, sir.
So, Cecil, have I answered your question over here?
Fair enough, sir. So
Fine.
before, there's one more comment from Professor Tejimala. She says, the rhetoric of the tribes being different from India as underlying in the plan was later appropriated by the separatist elements in post-independence India. What is your observations on this?
I will be very guarded today to make any comments on this issue because I have not got the material at hand. Tejimala herself, having worked in Nagaland and also having authored a book or two on this issue, would be able to see a connection between what I have given as a lecture and her views on this. but the introduction of my On the Edge of Empire has made an attempt to give some continuity to the concern, if I may say, a continuity to the concern of demarcation of boundaries. And this remains unsettled, if I may say, this remains unsettled. Whether it is Assam, Naga Hills, whether it is Assam, Meghalaya, whether it is Mizoram, Assam, and the Surma Valley, the demarcation of boundaries remains a very serious issue.
Any other comments or questions? I think not. So then, Professor Semble, you know, that was a very, very interesting discussion, lecture and then discussion. I have got hold of the book that you're referring to, On the Edge of Empire, and it's extremely interesting. The preface itself suggests that the main objective of the book was to provide scholars of the region access to the sources, I think, sir. Sources, on the basis of which they can make the interpretation. So I think that was set out very clearly by you at the beginning of the book itself in the preface. But I think that you know, we can get a lot out of this book. Particularly, you know, I have not been able to go through the different chapters, the plans, Reed's plan, and so on and so forth. But I think we can cull and make, you know, we can get several kinds of inferences, historical inferences from this text. But what is perhaps interesting, you know, based on your lecture and the discussions that followed, is that the developments of the 19th century, particularly from the 1930s and 40s itself, 30s and 40s onwards, they continue to impinge and reverberate on present day politics. Is that not so, Professor Semble? Right from the, if we are talking about the instrument of accession and merger agreement in the context of the Khasi Jaintia Hills, or for that matter, the Naga issue, which is still to be satisfactorily resolved to the satisfaction of all parties. And in some ways, what Professor Malla has just stated a little earlier about these separatist elements, you know, taking some sort of justification in some way from these plans. So this idea of keeping the hills separate from the plains can, in a way, be traced back, you know, to the colonial policies.
Well, in a way, yes, but I don't make any conjectures. I speak from the information that is available with me. And may I inform that the proposals for administrative amalgamation of Burma, Assam, and Bengal come as early as a Chin Hills reorganization. Once the Chin Hills were brought in under Burma, and this is H.K. Barpujari in an article which I've put into this paper. I was able to get a copy of it. I have his paper of 1990. I don't have my footnote immediately, but the proposals actually go back to 1890. First to 1890, then 1930, 1928, 1930, 1947, 1945, 47. So it's a long drawn discussion. I have with me tons of material on this whole issue. And On the Edge of Empire only gave an introduction, a long 47-page introduction. But I intend to bring it out into a fuller text where I have papers of Archer, whether I have papers of, there is one more proposal which I've not included, which is John Hutton. John Hutton, 1948 proposal, which I have. It's a very long proposal, which is after independence, and it gives a different perspective of administering the hill areas within an India. And the perception is very much oriented towards administering these hills within an independent and a functional India. So let's hope I have the time and energy and whatever to continue to sit down and to bring out another book or two.
Thank you very much, Professor Simle. Please do so. We are looking forward to that because, like I said, there is much to be gained from the book, insights into the various groups. For example, I just had a quick look at the first few pages of J.P. Mill's note that you have provided here. There are many, many interesting historical inferences that one can cull from this if you're looking at understanding these groups. So I think it's been a very, very interesting lecture and generated a lot of discussion. There is absolutely no doubt that partition continues to be a highly contested area of research, and this and your book will provide information, provide the sources for people who continue to, who want to continue to work on this area. I think with that, we will bring today's lecture to a close. I now request Professor.
Hello.
Yes.
Jelling Star here.
Yes.
Who's that?
You have not commented from beginning, so we are now going to close. Who's this? Hello. I think I will now request Professor.
Professor Maulang, actually, before you request Professor Thakur to extend the vote of thanks, can I just request our participants and guests, those of them who can switch on their video so that we can take an online screen photo, group photo, before Professor Thakur extends the vote of thanks. So I request the participants, those of them who can switch on their video, please switch on so that we can take a group photo on screen. Please switch on. Please switch on the video. Those of you who can, please. As a token of your participation, we will treasure it in our ICSR gallery. Yeah, please. Some more, please, if they can. Some more, please.
Professor Thakur, where are you?
I am already.
He is there. He is very much visible. He is very much visible.
Please. Okay.
Please.
A.G. Limba. There's somebody who's called A.G. Limba. I cannot.
Some more, if you can. Yes.
He wanted to ask one question.
Okay, thank you so much, sir.
A.G. Limba, he was asking, trying to ask a question from sir.
No, I understand he has not put in the chat box and not able to hear him. So I think Professor Simle. Yes.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead. Professor Simle, I'm sorry since we wound up everything, but can we just take in a question from this person?
Yes, please go ahead.
I think he's a former student, Jelling Star. Please go ahead.
A.J. Limba or something like that. A.J. Limba, I think.
Yes, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Sir, thank you for this opportunity. I want to ask a question regarding the boundaries. When the British came here and annexed territories, they annexed places which cut across boundaries, geography, and race and tribes, and dissolved all territories, tribal territories or indigenous places. So, but when the British leave the place, it seems like these traditional places, they are confused or something which they claim the place that they had before, which the British did not recognize, or some of them which they put on as a line. As in the case of Kazi State also, they should Himachal, they lost some of the place to Assam. Or can we say a state, or can we put a statement, or can we put a blame or something like that, that the British are responsible for these boundary issues, interstate and international, or a few parts of it? We just want to have clarification on that. Thank you.
let me make a comment on this. AJ Limba.
Yes, sir.
I will not go beyond 1946 in this issue, but the boundary issue of 1947, the Radcliffe Award, was done in a hurry and did not take into consideration the local elements. And I would request you to meet and to discuss matters with my colleague Binaya, because he is doing the partition issue, and he has research scholars also who are working on this. And but this, I hope I've been able to bring out some seminal discussion on work that possibly could be done on the boundary issues, not related exclusively to Meghalaya or Manipur or Nagaland. In fact, there should be a possibility of a work, as the French scholar has done on the Patkai Hills, of a very serious issue of people lying on people, being divided between two governments, two territories, two countries eventually, and two or more countries. So this is possibly an area of research that could be taken up. How much information one will be able to get from these very sensitive material is a question that we should consider. But there's a possibility. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
I
you,
think
sir.
with that, we'll bring today's program to a close. May I request Professor Thakur to kindly give the vote of thanks?
Thank you. Greetings, everyone. I would like to take this opportunity to express most sincere gratitude to Professor David R. Simley for his illuminating address. I speak for everyone attending when I say we have learned a great deal today. I would also like to thank Professor C.A. Maulong, Head of the Department History, for her effective and engaging moderation. Heartfelt thanks to the organizers at the ICSSR who, in spite of technical difficulties, ensured the smooth conducting of this lecture. The efforts made by Professor B. Panda, Honorary Director ICSSR NERC, deserve our gratitude as well. I also thank Mr. Thangboyji, always helping us in various ways. Department Neha, so I take this opportunity to thank him also. Last but definitely not the least, I am also grateful to all colleagues, research scholars, and other attendees who joined in and made sure that an engaging interaction followed Sir Simley's enlightening address. Thank you, everyone. Namaskar.
Professor
Namaskar.
Maulong, can I have my last word?
Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Professor Maulong and Professor Thakur. It was wonderful to listen Simle today. And I believe this lecture has created a lot of enthusiasm in the minds of our young as well as also senior scholars. We in ICSR believe that developmental outcomes are not only the effect of only economic, political, or sociological forces. We are firmly convinced that current developmental outcomes are definitely being influenced by historical facts, history, and even geographical space. We will continue our effort in days to come to bring in more of historians and other social scientists to deliberate, to deliver lectures, to interact with our scholars and with our senior and junior, and then to see that we ICSR and also in collaboration with our different departments in NEHU and also in other universities in the Northeast, we take social science nearer to the people so that there is a connect between social science research and the policy and its outcome when it comes to the livelihood of people in this part of the country. With this, I think we are more innovating in days to come. I think on migration, on tourism, on leadership, on, I think, many such pertaining issues. I hope that the departments in NEHU and even outside NEHU, they will be very heartily collaborating with us so that ultimately social science reaches to people and impacts their livelihood. Thank you so much. I thank the Department of History for I think, ably coordinating this program and giving their wholehearted support to us in ICSR. Look forward to more such collaboration in days to come. With these words, I thank each one of you present here itself for being with us and for your sustained and continuing listening and participation. Thank you so much. Professor Mogulong, if you would like to say anything as a last word, you can tell. Then we can close.
So just a big thank you to all colleagues and participants, and especially to our today's speaker, Professor Semle, and of course, even to Professor Panda, the Honorary Director, ICCSR, NERC, for, giving us an opportunity to collaborate with your center. Thank you so much.
I'm also equally honored that.
One last word, if you don't mind, to Professor Semle. Sir, I got this book of yours, On the Edge of Empire, from my father. And it was only, when this program was scheduled today that I actually went through it. Started the introduction, it's very engaging, and I definitely will go right through the book now.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's out of print now.
Oh, I see.
There's only, I think I purchased the last 5 copies. I'm going to ask Sage to have a reprint of it.
Right.
Hopefully they'll be able to do it.
It's a great book, yeah.
Okay,
Yes,
so
Professor.
more. Yeah, so now we can say goodbye to everyone, and we call it a day with happy, I think, memories, and with the knowledge that I think we gained from Professor Semle's lecture. I think that will continue to inspire and raise more questions in days to come. Thank you so much for everyone.
Thank you.
Let's call it a day. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So
Thank you, sir.
Okay,
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.